All right, hey guys, it's Paul. So today I wanted to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh's weird judge problem that I don't really understand and have had questions about for like my entire time playing like at least somewhat competitively. So Yu-Gi-Oh and rulings and judges and all of that. Basically, in Yu-Gi-Oh, cards interact in a load of different ways, and sometimes two or three or more cards will all kind of be interacting. Something will happen in the game, and you can't figure out what to do. You and your opponent have a disagreement on how something is supposed to resolve, when something is supposed to activate, what order something goes in, what something means, and if it's a tournament, if you're just playing for fun, and who knows what you do, but if there's a tournament, you're supposed to call a judge over, and the judge, takes a look at the situation, analyzes it, and is supposed to give you an answer. And if you disagree with the judge, then you can appeal it, and then the head judge of the event, at least at like a regional or YCS, will come over and give his or her verdict, and then that's it. So whatever the head judge rules as the ruling is just what the ruling is. Sort of. So that's where everything gets really weird. A big thing that happens in Yu-Gi-Oh! Pretty often is like at a YCS one weekend, a certain card will be ruled a certain way, or a certain interaction will be ruled a certain way. There's so many instances of this, and I feel bad because I can't think of a specific one off the top of my head, which I probably should have prepared for, but whatever, we're just talking. Things will happen, and like that's how it goes. And so the judge gives his or her sort of final ruling verdict, and that's what it is for that weekend. So during that weekend, that event, this card or whatever the situation is ruled this way. However, next weekend at a different YCS or a different regional, a different head judge might give a different ruling, and then in that case, that's how it is at that weekend. Do you see the problem here? There's already a big issue because it's like anytime I've gone to regionals and YCS events, I have been fortunate enough to not come across like extremely, divisive ruling things. But I certainly have seen other people fall into these camps where things can get vicious over rulings. And I know what you're thinking, like, well, like, are you arguing over like a silly card game? But I mean, like, when it comes down to the difference between like making day two at a YCS or not, topping or not, winning the event or not, rulings do matter, especially if it's like a ruling that you thought was in your favor and turns out it's not, or a ruling that you are almost 100% certain is being ruled incorrectly against you, but like you can't say anything because the head judge disagrees. That's a big problem. And something that I've always wondered about with Yu-Gi-Oh! Is why we don't have an official rulings source. We've sort of had things like it in the past from Konami. I remember for a while, I think there was a way that, we're talking like pre-2009, 8, like something around that time, where you could, I think, look up certain documented card rulings. I don't even remember what that was like. It's clearly it's not around now. I remember there's like Yu-Gi-Oh! Wikia where you are able to look up specific rulings for a card, although those oftentimes aren't like always updated, and it's like a wiki, so take it with a grain of salt. I mean, they were usually pretty reliable rulings, but sometimes it would just be pulled from, the OCG ruling for this is like this, or the TCG ruling for it is like this, which is another issue. The OCG and the TCG oftentimes have different rulings, or even sometimes wordings for cards, and that's troublesome. And so what usually ends up happening today is like there are judge groups on Facebook, which sounds fine, I guess. I mean, like if you have a ruling and you're in this Facebook group because you have a Facebook account and you've been invited in the group and accepted, then you can ask your ruling there, and some judges will respond and say, yeah, it works like this. What? I don't understand. That's just so, I guess taking a step back, how crazy is that though, right? Like the idea that you are going on the word of like, I guess, random people you haven't really met that aren't Konami employees or anything. They're not Konami R&D. They're just people on Facebook. Like, maybe they're right, but like maybe they're wrong. And what if they disagree? Like I've seen like in those there's like a few Facebook groups, adjudication something, and like there's a few other judges lounge or something. Why isn't Konami like actually is saying what rulings are? Why aren't, when rulings are set, why aren't there like precedents that are documented and can at least be looked up? It's crazy to me that that doesn't exist for a game that's as like mature as it is. Like Yu-Gi-Oh's like nearly 20 years old. Technically it is 20 years old in, I think, in Japan, but like for us, I mean, Yu-Gi-Oh, it's an old game. Like we've got a great, you know, sort of, there's a history to this. I'm surprised this hasn't come up more. Now, I want to be clear here. I'm not saying that Yu-Gi-Oh judges suck or that they're bad or that, you know, they're doing a bad job. There have been like horror stories about judges who have, you know, maybe conspired against players or given wrong rulings on purpose, or maybe they just don't know what they're talking about. I cannot comment on that. I don't know anything. I've had really nothing but pleasant experiences with judges for me. But I've like seen people get into like shouting matches and arguments and all that stuff and just like feel very hard done by these judges who they feel maybe just don't know their stuff, or were just incorrect this day, or it was ruled this way last weekend, why is it not this way this. You see the issue here. It's strange to me because there's a pretty simple, I want to say simple solution that Konami could do, which is just having a rulings database. It's crazy to me that we don't have that. Why can't I just look, because they have a card database now. There's a card database. You can look up cards and like see, you know, where they're like interactions with them and like what set they're from. And so that's good. That's a good start. We have Yu-Gi-Oh! Neuron now, which has the same functionality. You're able to look up cards, even have like deck lists and stuff. You've got a dual calculator. Take the next step, Konami. Why is there not a rulings database? When a ruling involving a card gets like, you know, officially ruled, why can't that like be in a database? I mean, I guess maybe Yu-Gi-Oh! Is fluid and it can change, but I don't think it really should be able to change because like the syntax is supposed to be there for a reason. Speaking of syntax, Konami has made, you know, they made problem-solving card text. I don't know what year they introduced it. 2011 maybe? I don't know, some year. Problem-solving card text, for those who don't know, also called PSCT, is just the way, the language that cards are written in, because for a long time, cards were kind of just written however, and it could be vague and ambiguous. So now it's very clear what activation conditions are, or what cards target versus which cards don't, or like what order you resolve different parts of the same effect, that kind of thing. For the most part, it works. It solves many problems. Like I don't want this video to come across as me saying it's like useless and they just haven't done anything, because problem solving card text helps. In fact, I'd say for 90% of ruling situations, problem solving card text does exactly what it's supposed to do and a pretty damn good job of it. But there's always going to be edge cases. There's always going to be like just weird things that are going to pop up, and if you've played Yu-Gi-Oh! For any length of time, you just know how it goes. Cards seem normal, cards seem fine, it all seems okay until it isn't, and it's in the middle of a tournament and no one knows what's going on. And I mean, there are rulings that like, I've judged Yu-Gi-Oh! Events before. At locals, I've judged like a regional once or twice. Mixed experiences about that, but that's a different story. But you know, everything's okay until it isn't, right? Murphy's Law. And the moment something does break and the moment something goes wrong, and no one really knows the right ruling, someone's going to feel screwed. Someone's going to feel like, you know, they lost because these judges didn't know what they're talking about. And problem-solving card text solves many issues, but it doesn't solve all the issues. Like, an example of a weird edge case, just that comes to mind for me, is like A counters, like, you know, the counters that alien monsters and their cards like put on stuff, versus cubic counters. So with A counters, it was ruled at some point by somebody, I don't know who, that A counters stay on monsters but don't have any effect when there's not a card on the field that gives A counters an effect, where they like lose attack or whatever, for all that stuff. But cubic counters do always have an effect, you know, there's not like currently a cubic card in play that... I'm not trying to explain why it doesn't work that way, or even saying that I agree or disagree. I'm just saying, like, why does one work and why does one not? Like, And why can't there be a source to find that? Like, why do you have to find things out in like this trial by fire way where it can happen to you in round 8 of a YCS that is really important and then like you end up losing? That's crazy. I've seen problems like, things break out over this. So I think Konami could solve this by just having a rulings repository of some kind, some type of a database where you can search for things, or like a chat system where you can actually ask and get like a live answer. I know that's like kind of gets into the customer service realm, so that might be a little bit impractical. But I mean, I think it would make a lot of sense. I think it would be really helpful, especially because there's not an official online simulator of this game. And that's my last and final point about this. I think that when Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel comes out, the game that they announced and is supposed to be happening maybe this year or something like that, I would hope that when Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel comes out, if it's an official simulator for the game, that rulings that happen on Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel are deemed as the official ruling, because it's a coded simulator that should work 100% of the time. It should be a completely non-biased thing. I would like for that to kind of coincide in some way with an official ruling source so that things can always be consistent all the time. Don't know if it's going to happen, but that's just what I think it should be. Alright, that's it for the video. I've gone on long enough about this. You guys can let me know what you think. What have been your experiences with rulings? Am I just bitching and moaning for no good reason? Or do you think that maybe after this many years, this is a thing that this game should have? I don't know. Alright, it's going to be it. I'll see you guys in the next video here on, Past Turn.